Well, welcome everybody to our Q&A in preparation for a coming special call business meeting. If today goes well, then we'll move forward with that plan. And if today, through just the thoughts and wisdom and sharing of this room, this digital room, we gain greater insight that would cause us to change that plan, that's okay too. You guys are partners for good reason, that name. We truly believe that more than members, you are helping to partner with us. And ultimately, we're all partnering with God, that He's so gracious that we let us be partners of His in the greatest, mission known to man, which is to build His church and to ultimately build His kingdom. So thankful that you take the time this afternoon. You that are watching this on playback, thank you for taking the time to do that. That's a special commitment to do it on playback because you can't even interact or talk. And so you are so amazing to do that. So today we encourage, before we pray, we encourage all kinds of dialogue and questions. There is no silly or stupid question to ask. If we say something that you don't know what it means or need more information, I just want to bless and free you to do that. If you're watching on playback and you would like to, we would encourage you to get in touch with us via email or phone. We'll make that available to you. You can do that as well as a form of interaction, but just lean in. This is our attempt, much like we talked about at our last business meeting, to have lots of dialogue and prep as we talked about quorum and the amount of people gathering to make decisions and that whole subject matter. We knew that implied, if we take the steps that we did, that we needed to include you earlier in prayer, and we did that 2-3 weeks ago. We would need to have meetings like this that bring the questions and the answers out in front of people for processing, for prayer, long before they arrive at a space to have to give a vote or a decision. And so this is just your leadership, not just Marcia and I and the campus pastors, but our board of directors. This is our collective effort to continue to improve, but to do everything that would allow for healthy process. And so that's why we're here today. So I hope that gives you the freedom to just lean and speak up, all that stuff. On behalf of all your peers that aren't on this call, also ask every question possible so that everyone feels like their question got asked. And that way, when we gather, if we gather for this special call business meeting, where we do have a few things to accomplish beyond just the subject matter, we can do so in an expedited way and not drag on all afternoon. I know people appreciate very just efficient meetings. So Marcia, my beautiful wife, would you please pray to open up our meeting here officially?
Absolutely. Father, we love you. Thank you for the body of Christ. I love that in 7 different locations today you were worshiped. And today I pray that as we meet to discuss very important subjects, would you help all of us to have minds that comprehend? We want your will. We want to be good stewards of this church. And so I just pray that there would be good clarity and wisdom of the Zoom room, and bless everybody who's giving up time today to participate, Lord. We really want to walk in step with you. And so we ask for your help today, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. I'm going to let Jordan Schlegel in a second, our wonderful executive administrator. Some of you know Jordan and some of you don't. He's going to be doing a lot of the presentation today, the talking. He will do it much better than I ever could. Just as I stop here, just to say, we're blessed to have Jordan in the role that he is. Our board is blessed with one of their primary responsibilities being the fiscal responsibility, the financial responsibility of our organization. Jordan serves me in that capacity. He also serves our board. And Jordan, you do a great job, and he is a man of integrity. And so as he shares, and when he says, I've led hundreds of pages of IRS code on something, we believe him. Like, this is that kind of person. You know, he is constantly researching, asking people, connecting with just wise people out there, whether they be on the church side of things or on like the legal side of things. We contacts lawyers, just different things like that, as we are just remaining just financially responsible. We also have some board members on this call. I see former pastor, youth pastor Aaron Yanagi on this call. I see Marty Villa with his wife Ernie Ruth. I definitely see some of our reps. I'm trying to see if I see any others. I see Gina and Oli, a couple of our representatives from other campuses. And I'm probably leaving somebody out, but forgive
Chuck
me.
Adams.
Chuck Adams. I did see him earlier in the car. He's someplace
You
here.
see
So,
Gina?
and more people, I see Chuck now. More people may be adding in. So I just invite you to speak up from the board meeting as you desire. And that way there can be representation from that group as well. There are some matters that deal with specific campuses. And so I know that Pastor Dave Leatherman from the Ripon campus may speak up at some point. Of course, Pastor Kim, always welcome to speak. And anyone else that there's a matter of application. Let me say a couple things to prepare us, and then I hand it over to Jordan. Couple things. First of all, as you received in the letter, we're here to talk about the purchase and sell of a couple different properties. The sell of our cherished St. John's property downtown that has so many amazing memories there. And it's just, I mean, I don't say this lightly. It is a precious place because of who has inhabited it over the years. We're here to talk about St. John's and that property. Obviously, if we're bringing it to you, we're asking the Lord if it would benefit as stewards, that's the right word, as stewards of one church, of which each one of us is in some capacity, as both leaders, board members, partners, all that, is the right way to steward one church to sell that property. Secondly, we're talking about purchasing property. Again, back to stewardship. There's an opportunity to the north of the Ripon campus adjacent, and we'll speak about that, to purchase 2 parcels of land that will help us accomplish our mission. That's the second thing. But there are other things that Jordan's going to talk to you about. There is something called an employee retention credit that we received from the government as part of COVID support. That is money that we would like to use for different purposes, whether it be advancement, or you'll hear some of it today, but like debt reduction and just getting financially healthier. You'll hear that. There's also the opportunity to do solar and thus repair some roofs at different One Church campuses that are in need that can be part of this picture. You're going to hear about that. Lastly, I believe I've set enough of the stage except for this last thing, but it's important for this group to know something that is now public, but you may not have heard it yet. This morning, Pastors James and Chelsea Alexander, they submitted their resignation. Well, they had submitted their resignation weeks ago, a month ago. But today they informed their congregation of their decision to move on from One Church. They'll be relocating to Sacramento and joining with family there. But their last Sunday at the Turlock campus will be in 2 weeks on Sunday, the 24th. And so we'll be able to give more dialogue to that at a future meeting, and just other transitions that you might have heard about. But at this point, that's significant information, because Jordan may share some thoughts and throughout his presentation about not just the St. John's property, but our situation in Turlock with a property that we have a pretty decent mortgage on. And it also, in the second building, has just loose estimate, probably more than this, but we would think $400,000 or $500,000 of deferred maintenance, with the roof leaking all over and electrical, just a lot there that we've never been able to tackle and still cannot. So that's another thing right now with a struggling property, a dilapidated property, and now without a leader there, that we think it's prudent to bring that to this body. So without further ado, everybody, let's give it up for Mr. Jordan Schlegel.
All right, guys, we'll just walk through the slides. We sent this email out Saturday afternoon. I don't know if you guys had time to review it, so I'll just kind of walk us through it as if maybe this is the first time you're seeing it. So what we have in front of us, as Pastor Kyle mentioned, the high-level goals of looking at two parcels in Ripon that are right to the north of the building. We got some roofing things to consider at the Modesto and possibly Ripon campus. And we have solar as well. The roofing and solar are kind of one project to consider. The sale of the St. John's property, and making a priority in this season of looking at ways of debt reduction at large. At any point that somebody's got a question, go ahead and just butt in and stop me, and we'll take care. This isn't has to be overly formal or anything, so we'll address things live. A little bit of an overview of the opportunities at hand. The Ripon parcels, it is two parcels north of the Ripon campus, and this was something we were trying to get done back when we initially purchased the property in 2019, but at that time the seller was unwilling to sell. We've since then tried to buy it, honestly, 4 times a year, every year, seeing if they're willing to sell, and finally here we are. Part of the need is to take a portion of one of those parcels to put a preschool playground in. We built the Ripon campus kids rooms to preschool code, and the last thing in order to have a preschool in Ripon would be to have a playground on the exterior of the building. And so with these two parcels, we'd only need a small portion of one parcel in order to have that playground set up for us there. As Pastor Kyle mentioned earlier, the ERC is the employee retention credit that we filed back in the first quarter of 2021, and we finally received the funds in Q2 of 2023. I think there's about $536,000 in the bank right now. Currently, with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a incentive for doing solar for nonprofits. One of the significant changes is that there's an option for direct pay. So as a church, we don't file taxes. So in most instances where there's a tax credit, it's just a little more difficult for a church to utilize, because you kind of need to get an investor to fund the project, and then they take the tax credit, and then they kind of make a deal with the church as to how much of a discount the church would get. And it obviously just gets really complicated. But with this Inflation Reduction Act, there's an option for just direct pay to a nonprofit, which means they just send us a check. So the current incentive is 30% off the total project. And with certain types of roofing, it has the option to include roofing as part of the project. And so the example I'm given, just so it's perfectly clear, is if the project for solar and roofing was $1 million, they would send us a check for $300,000 when the project's done and cleared and in the next tax year. So the roofs that we're currently looking at, the Modesto campus, there's leaking roofs throughout the property. This current bid that we have in place is to do every single roof of the building. That roofing has a 15-year warranty, and the expected lifespan is 20 to 30 years with the product. And we're also in process of finalizing some figures for the Ripon campus, as they have some roof needs as well and some gutter needs there. When we look at just a breakdown of what the costs look like for each one of these opportunities, you see the Ripon property, the two parcels are $657,370. The seller is only willing to sell both parcels, so it's not an option for us to buy a single parcel. And then we're allocating about $42,000 to be able to pull off developing the land for the playground. And that would bring the Ripon total to $700,000. The Modesto roofing, you can see the breakdown there, comes to a total of $340K, and the 30% incentive back would be about $102,000. The solar for Modesto and Ripon, total of $446,000, and that 30% incentive is about $133K. It's not an option to do just the roofing to get the 30% incentive. The incentive revolves around the installation of solar, and it gives us the ability to include roofing. So we couldn't choose to just do the roofing and get the 30% off. That 30% off is contingent upon the solar installation. So you can see the subtotal of everything is about $1.4 million. And with the 30% kickback, that comes out to about $1.2 million. As we look to what are some options we have in order to do everything on how to pay for it, my current recommendation is looking at about utilizing $300,000 of the ERC money that we have in the bank. You can see the $536,000 balance, using about $300,000 of our own cash to get deposits rolling and get things moving. And then to apply for a $1.1 million loan with AG Financial. That loan payment would be an estimated loan payment of about $8,300 a month. And as we look at what we've labeled here with the current loan cushion, that $7,100 a month would be what Turloc's loan payment is right now. And so if we're trying to kind of just look at this as some loan payments that we could need to have cash to be able to cover, that'd be about $15,487 a month. Now, the story behind the numbers with that, my recommendation of only using $300,000 of the ERC would be to keep the balance of about $236,000 in the bank. That way we could utilize those funds to make payments of that new loan and the Turlock campus loan for over a year. 12 months of those loan payments combined would be about $185K. And we'd have $236,000 in the bank in order to make those loan payments for up to a year, if not more than a year, in order to give us some time and for it to not impact any campus budgets in any way, shape, or form. That solar incentive, like we talked about, it adds up to about $236K off the Modesto roofing and the solar install at both Modesto and Ripon campuses. Part of the deal with solar would be that we'd be looking at about $2,500 a month of savings in our utility bills when you combine both Modesto and Ripon. And that is a primary path forward for us to be able to put that $2,500 a month of savings towards the church loan payment, of which would, over the lifespan of the solar panels, that would save $730,000 off our loan at large and reduce it by almost 5 years. So that would be making our normal loan payment and then putting this $2,500 of savings from our utilities as an additional payment on top of our normal loan payment, for clarity. Over the 25-year lifespan of the solar panels at Modesto and Ripon, it would conservatively save us a little over $1 million in our utility bills. With the sale of the consideration of the sale of the St. John's property, our commercial real estate agent has assessed it to be a floor value of $900,000, and we would look to list it at about $1.2 million. Upon selling that property, that would be a primary consideration to then just pay off this new loan of that $1.1 million. And if that were to all line up and work out that way, then, you know, we would own the 2 parcels outright. We'd own the roof and the solar and have no added loan payment for any of the projects. So the AG financial loan of the $1.1 million to consider is just like a stopgap loan in order to have a little bit of time for the St. John's property to sell. Part of our time crunches on these things are the Ripon parcels. You know, there's we're trying to consider acquiring it before it'd be sold to a developer. It's a little bit of a hot commodity, and so that's a driving force on the timeline of this. And an additional timeline with the solar and the roofing is in order for the project to be considered a 2023 project, we have to have permits approved by the city in 2023. And with the current laws that are already in place, if it ends up being in 2024, then the entire project would have to be prevailing wage. And there's just a lot more added cost to the project. So there's a high incentive to be able to try to get your permits approved by the city in 2023 and not have to do prevailing wage, along with a lot of other training requirements, and just it would just add a lot of cost to the solar and the roofing. So those are kind of the two primary driving forces of the need for this timeline to consider these things as soon as possible. And I just said a lot of things right there. And so nobody that I heard cut me off or butted in, but I'm going to imagine we got some questions now. So I will stop talking and let people unmute and ask what makes sense, or any comments or anything. I'll open the floor.
While you're thinking of your questions, I'll add 2 comments. Jordan, you mentioned this, but earlier I thought of it. The reason the seller of the property to the north of the Ripon campus did not want to sell it is really because they never contacted us back for years and years and years to our reach outs and that kind of thing. And lo and behold, in April, when we reached out again, they contacted us back, and that's because they were poised to sell to some developers who have developed all the other parcels of land, all down Doak. That's the major cross street of Acacia and Ripon. And this is the only piece of land left in that side of the street. And they were planning to sell it. In fact, the same developers that had developed everything else were in talks with this seller. And I think that our realtor says he felt compassion on us and decided to work with us because we had been diligent and reached out all this time. And I believe, based on what our realtor is saying, is that if we had not made an offer when he did, that the talks were actually active at that time with this other developer. The seller would have sold to them. And so, and I believe since that time, the property, our realtor has stated that there is a potential pathway to lot line adjust or whatever we need to do and sell a portion of the property back to the same developer, perhaps, to develop it. And then we would, of course, make some money back. So all that's on the table in the future. But the reality is that that land is valuable, not just for the preschool playground, but for future ministry vision, and just building the kingdom, business as mission. We can go down that list. And as valuable as it is, though, there also is I would say, a more pressing need to create margin within our budgets by reducing debt. And so that's why that is the most active conversation, or the top priority, if you will, after we secure a couple of things and do whatever, before we would ever put more than a playground on that property. We would certainly need to create some margin at the Ripon campus, and in other ways, so that ministry can be done at a greater capacity. So I want to state that. And then if, just for clarity, if 6 months ago or 9 months ago or whatever, we would have had the foresight and the partners would have desired to make this decision, we could have sold St. John's back then. I'm not saying we should have, we just could have. And that money that would be in the bank would basically go towards all these goals that we've stated, alongside of the ERC, the employee retention credit money, the $536,000, which would more than pay for all these expenses and not require an additional new loan. But because we did not have that foresight and we're doing it all at once, and as Jordan stated, because we cannot make the sale of the St. John's property part of a contingency to buy the Ripon property and thus not have to take out an additional loan. That's why we're going this route. But I want it strongly heard that it is the commitment of me as the pastor. It's the commitment of the board. It's the discussion and desire of all the campus pastors that ultimately this sale of the St. John's property is a commitment between us, between partners in written form and in voted and being voted on, in order that when it sells, the money will be used as if we had sold it before and we could make all this a cash thing. So I just want that very clear, the commitment and intention, and that will not just be words that we say, but it will be a matter of voting. If this moves to a special called business meeting, it will be part of the vote for that commitment one to another. So back to Jordan. I'll pass it back to you. You can host questions. Can you, Jordan, do you mind taking away the slides for now, since everybody has that? If you need to pull it back up to show something, that's fine. But just in the event that on the recording, it shows people's faces a little bit better, I think this might be good, as long as you don't need that.
Deb Wilson from Modesto campus. I was just curious as to buying the property in Ripon. Is the preschool the main reason that we would want to be buying it? What other plans would there be? And if indeed the preschool is one of the big projects, what kind of timeline would we be looking at on the preschool? What do we have in place already and what still needs to be put in place?
The timeline of the preschool, the classrooms are all up to code, as was part of the initial construction. So we would need the playground, and then we would need to start the process with the state and the paperwork and getting a director. I think realistically, we would be looking at fall of 2024 for a launch of the preschool. But if you find the right person, it could move faster than that. But I think we would be very diligent to have the right preschool director at that campus. So it's hard to say definitively when we would have that person, but it's actually not far off, given that the classrooms were built to the codes. The playgrounds are pretty straightforward as far as the regulations go, so it shouldn't be difficult to pull that side of the equation off. As far as the rest of the vision for the property, I think the sky's the limit, so to speak. So I don't think there's anything set in stone as of this moment. It was more, since it is such a hot commodity of the property, to have the ability to secure it now and then to have time to dream and have vision for it, I think is the thing that's relevant right now. But I'm saying that, and Dave could already have 17 dreams that he's ready to unroll right now. So I won't speak on his behalf.
I'll say this. Let me say this, and then Pastor Dave, would you share whatever you'd like to? But the preschool's always been a desire to get going. You know, we've heard from numerous people connected to our church and leadership of our church, but also outside the church, that Ripon could use another great preschool, especially in a beautiful property like the Ripon campus, with great leadership and teams there to shepherd those people that would be newly walking on and off property every week. I would say, though we've been wanting to do that for some time, we haven't been able to because we didn't get any phone calls back. So I would say the most recent catalyst would be that the property, the seller is interested to sell, and there are many interested to buy. So put that right alongside of the need for a preschool playground, and you have the oomph of why now on that property. Jordan and I have talked with our realtor, Rob Saucer, who we've used for the last probably 10 years, I don't know, something like that, 8 years. And he has attested that this is a valuable piece of property and will be a core asset of One Church. As we have processed, that's one of the reasons why we feel like it's time to sell St. John's. As much as we love that property, we do not feel the same about it. It is not a core asset. It is not propagating the active mission of One Church. It's just it's a blessing and it is an asset. But this will be something that actually propels us forward at multiple locations, not just the Ripon, but in particular at the Ripon campus. So with that in mind, our realtor's also talking and going to be connecting with other businessmen and developers to see what they would offer us for a portion of that land. And if that is a better idea to sell it and make money than it is to develop it ourselves or to use it for ministry in the future, we will entertain that thought. That's for a future meeting to discover. As any sale of property has to come before this body of partners. But I would say that our first idea is to use the property to build the kingdom financially, and ultimately, better way to say that is to support ministry at the Ripon campus and at all locations. So that's very, very clear on that. But could there be a coffee shop? Could there be a gym? Could there be any number of things across the way on the other side from the church there at some point that could be revenue building for us if we were to develop it, or more than likely somebody else's mission as we sell them the land or lease or whatever we would do? Yes. And so Jordan and I and Rob Saucer, we're working on that end with Pastor Dave and Kim, very involved in all those discussions. So that's the business side that I would say I would be able to speak to. But Pastor Dave, with the context that I set the stage earlier, that really before we want to like dream a bunch of dreams for ministry, we really want to see our financial picture from a debt reduction or a payment margin improved. With that being the higher priority than dreaming ministry dreams for it, I'll just defer to Pastor Dave for anything he'd like to add to emphasize that last statement, but also to make mention of things that might come to his mind should we end up being, stewards of an asset long term.
Yeah, thank you. So securing this property and with the sale of St. John's, where it doesn't become a financial burden. And I really appreciate the Pastor Kyle Marcia and the board's sentiment to make that a part of the One Church business aspect of things, the commitment level. But securing that property next to Ripon, it just affords us the ability to dream in great ways on how we could use that space over there, from everything from making it a nice clean parking lot to creating a downtown Disney sort of outdoors environment that the entire community can be a part of, or and ways that we can do ministry, youth ministries or young adults ministries or family ministries. One thought was a drive-in movie theater sort of thing. And so the dreams can be vast, but the first step is being able to acquire the property over there. There's no money for the big dreams, but once we have the property, then you don't know what doors the Lord's are going to open, and God is faithful. And so we'll just continue to dream.
And Pastor Dave, would you just speak to our conversations, just briefly, maybe not in detail, but just, because as much as you and I are both big dreamers, we both realize that prior to dreaming new dreams, we are excited to pay for, might be the easy way to say that, pay for old dreams. But I think that a healthier way to say that would be to just, and we are paying for old dreams, but like we want to get our financial situation healthier so that ministry can grow to a place where there's new dreams that are able to be fueled and funded. So I just would like for you to just echo our commitment to that measure of health.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had in-depth conversations about the value of remaining healthy financially as a church, and you know, not putting ourselves in such a situation that we're just never able to dream. We're always just trying to play catch up or operate in sort of a hamstrung sort of mode of ministry operation. And you know, just through our conversations and just, you know, basically basically saying, you know, our goal isn't to just acquire is debt or whatever. It's to be healthy, and that's part of the St. John sale. And so I'm very these conversations I always leave blessed by, with both Pastor Kyle and the board, just in their commitment and their desire to be debt free. And again, like this property purchase of the Ripon, of the property next to Ripon. I sent Jordan a picture. He might be able to throw that up there so you can actually see the property that we're talking about. But the sale of one property in downtown Modesto to acquire a piece of property in Ripon is a pretty savvy maneuver that I think would be a terrific blessing to one church, because it's basically a trade on many levels, and we get solar and millions of dollars in savings over the course of 30 years from the solar in the deal as well. And so I again, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Pastor Kyle, but the conversations about debt and everything, they just have been very healthy, very encouraging to me as a campus pastor who tries to weigh the balance between, you know, what do I need, you know, right now to help ministry move forward, and, you know, what's a part of a good steward or dreaming for the future of things as well.
Thank you, Deb. I hope that answered your question. That was a good one. Other questions?
Are you saying that you're planning to keep both parcels?
We don't know. We know that we feel like we're supposed to, at this time, purchase both because they're offering both together. But long term, the parcels are really long and narrow. And so if we choose to sell one of the parcels, the far one, what's left is pretty narrow. All it would probably be good for is the playground and maybe a parking lot. So as part of this evaluation that would follow, it could be that we do a lot line adjustment, and instead of having two really narrow things, maybe we keep the back portion that's less desirable but very desirable to us because we can use it for ministry, and we sell the corner, which is typically what somebody else would want, or so on. So with a lot line adjustment, there is the possibility of selling some of it. There's also the possibility of just saying we're going to sell one parcel to. So the answer is we do not yet know, but what we do know is that once we take this step, then our realtor will begin to give us more options as he, you know, throws out the net of different things. And so we are open to selling it. I would say we were excited to selling it if it means, if we're excited to sell a portion of it if it means making a fair price, you know. But we also want to be good stewards of that at that point, you know. But the first priority, I would say, before holding on to something for ministry is good stewardship today. So that's why we would be open to selling a portion of the land, Camille.
And what is the Ripon campus running right now for their weekly attendance?
Around 200. And that's a hard number to say because that might be Sunday attendance, but you know, there's youth ministries, there's groups. And so from an adherence point of view, it's more than that. Other questions?
I have a statement to make.
Well, Jordan just put a picture on the screen. Jordan, tell us what we're looking at, or Dave or whoever.
I think Jordan might be muted, or
Yep, this is the screenshot Pastor Dave just sent me of the two parcels to the north here. These empty fields that you can see right above the church building.
So imagine a line drawn right down the middle, horizontal here, and you would see the two parcels. The church building to the bottom of the picture, and then this city street that goes into the neighborhood on the top of the picture. Marcia, go ahead.
My statement is only about preschools and my experience at the Modesto campus. And so not about purchasing property or selling property. I just want to say that my experience as campus pastor at the Modesto campus is that the number one ongoing ministry outreach that Modesto has seen in the last 12 years, where unchurched, unsaved people have come through our doors, gotten saved, been discipled, become board members or board reps. Life change has been through a preschool. So when we talk about how does a church continue to reach the lost, I love the idea of meeting a really practical need, which right now in Ripon, there is a huge need for preschool, but the fact that it would potentially be the opportunity that the Lord uses, not just to care for the need of a family, but really to reach a household and generations for him, is just awesome. So anyways, I just want to say I'm a big believer in preschools on church property, because I have only seen it produce salvation and connection with the church and ministry opportunity. And Kim Hammond, who I think is on this call, is awesome.
Who's our preschool director?
Our preschool director is awesome. And 5 days a week, she is ministering to people that I would never have an opportunity to, just as a pastor, but it is a wide open door. And so I'm just a big fan of doing what God has put in front of you to do and meeting some practical needs.
As you're thinking of other questions, please speak up. I want to set the stage for what we're going to be considering if we move this to a special call business meeting. Again, all of these things really do need your affirmation as partners. So to purchase land, that would need your affirmation, your vote. To sell land, that would need your affirmation or vote. If we do the solar roof project as a whole project, that amount of money would need your affirmation and your vote. The rest of it really just needs your understanding. Our priority for debt reduction. Prior to the Ripon purchase, if you've been around a long time, prior to the Ripon, the new building that you saw on the picture there, we took a stab at purchasing a big acreage of dirt, 21 acres, because we were in a building on the east side that did not, sat 40 people, and we fit 80 in it, 2 services. And anyway, we purchased land, and when that land did not materialize exactly, very quickly the Lord provided an opportunity to sell the land. We didn't really know, and it was a matter of months. If you remember, it was a miracle. And we gained $900,000 to $1 million in just 6 months with that step of faith of purchase. Again, a valuable core asset property. And what we did, the last time we paid off a sizable portion of debt was that moment, because at that point we did not know the Ripon skating rink would be available. It had been prayed over, circled, any number of things by the Ripon team. But it was not yet available. And so we paid off the Riverbank campus property in full at that time. And it just speaks to, there are seasons in which we advance and there are seasons in which we retire debt. And right now, though, when you hear us talking about purchase, you can probably hear some advancement in that tone. I hope you also hear that we feel like we're in a season that we want to retire debt as well. And we want to get financially fitter and get more margin in some places and some budgets. And so that's just as important right now, maybe more important. And so with that in mind, I bring up the Turlock situation that I chose to clue you in on. We feel God's called us to the city of Turlock, and we are looking for who are the next leaders for that city and community. We're also, and probably most importantly to Marcia and I right now, we want to care for this congregation that today finds themselves without a leader. We love Pastor James and Chelsea. They are incredible leaders, and we will miss them. We are real sorry that they are gone or they're leaving, and we will miss them. But we trust them and we trust the Lord in his timing. And so we're just asking the Lord, how do we take care of this congregation? And so it's very difficult to be talking about the property alongside of caring for the congregation, but the church is not a building. The church benefits from a building, especially when they're a good building. And right now, that building has as many challenges as it is a blessing. And so alongside of caring for this congregation and walking with them through this season, and we are, we feel like we need to explore, that's the best word, what it is that we can do with this property. Our realtor has let us know early on in this process of appraisal that he could see the school district purchasing this building, and then they are responsible for the mortgage payment, and in particular the $500,000 of deferred maintenance that we estimate on the building. But a school district or a nonprofit, even, he brought up that kind of organization as well, often does not have need for a building like that on Sundays. And so could they then in turn rent it back to us on Sundays or on Wednesday nights? And then they're responsible for the asset and we are responsible for the congregation, which right now is about all that we can do and about all that congregation can do. It's, we were in a 4-year plan to bring the congregation to a self-sustaining place. And so we were doing well for this first year of it. But with a leadership change, we realized that the journey is difficult as we move ahead. And so it seems best to us and the board to explore the option to sell, to talk to different people, to talk to school districts, to see what the Lord does. By the way, I happened around a city leader in the community of Turlock 2 days ago. And without me saying anything, as we talked about the property, he said, what, a school district often buys property years in advance, even before they have a need for it, just to secure it. And they might rent it back to you. So maybe the Lord's in that, who knows? Ultimately, if we end up selling this property and it is no longer available to us, we have other ideas of where we could go in Turlock that would be a better financial situation. And ultimately, we are trying to care for a congregation and buy time while we are prayerful about a new leader. But a new leader ideally needs to come into this community and congregation in a different financial situation than we have right now, because it is such a burden. It is such a burden for a campus pastor right now. So,
could I add something?
Yeah, one more thing, and then I'll throw it to you.
Sure.
And thank you. I want you to be able to speak up. But that's why we want to explore this option right now. And we're trying to do so in such a way that it doesn't throw a congregation for a loop. But obviously, as we shared this information to them or these possibilities, you have some that were alarmed and they hear, I'm losing the place I've been for decades. And we understand that. So with great sensitivity, we want to walk that process. But this needs to come before the body as well, from just a permission, a vote to empower the board to sell this property so that it can be done in a timely way. And so as it relates to the sale of the St. John's property and the possible sale of the Turlock property, what the congregation will probably be asked to do is to vote on a threshold number. We're going to sell it from this number to this number. I guess you wouldn't nearly need a high number, because if we can get more, everybody would probably support that, but a threshold low number to where if the offers go below this number, then we'd have to come back for approval, but we would find a number that the congregation feels blessed to empower the leadership to walk out. And we would still, of course, keep the congregation the partners very informed of the steps in this and what happens. But that's usually how we handle the sale of property, is we use that threshold principle. So for St. John's and for Turlock. Now, Jordan, you mentioned the floor that our realtor says that we should be able to sell St. John's for is 900,000, that the list price would be 1.2. Can you give any kind of numbers as it relates to his feedback to you for Turlock property? And then I will go to whoever spoke up a second ago.
Turlock, the floor price would appear to be 3.6 million and the list price of 4.6 million.
And that is to not to a church that would purchase. That would be, my understanding, more so like a school district or a nonprofit or some type of organization. A church that would come to purchase would be looking for a lower amount. And so just full disclosure there. Who spoke up a second ago? Go ahead.
Yeah, it was me. I'm
Who are
on.
you? I think
Yeah.
you're Chad Hammond, but you're in the dark.
Yes, I am. So just want to make sure I was mic off mute. Okay, I'm good since you can hear me. Ages ago, 25 years ago, we went to a church that was in that property that actually built that building. And so, in fact, Kim and I were involved in the Christian preschool there. For the longest time, the church did whatever it could to keep all of the building part in the back up to code, up in maintenance and that sort of thing. And it was an ever emptying bucket, really. It needed so much, and it still needs now even more than it needed then. To the point where, honestly, the back part of it, if it's some $350 for try to get it back into code and get it up to date and usable. To be real, that whole back building, what we know about that building, it's relatively unusable. It's I know there's people in it now. There's even I think a business in the back running. It really needs to be wiped off the property. It really does. And if possible, things could be done for a building in the back on top of, they'd probably have to wipe off the current foundation, all that kind of stuff. I guess the point I'm getting at is it's a very valuable property. And I know I don't know if we're upside down in it necessarily, but it's a very, very valuable property and would actually probably be even more valuable without that building on it and with a new, albeit more in the way of a building loan or something like that, in the back. And it would only enhance the property. The church knew it when we were there, and they ended up selling off the very, 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 very back portion of it, of the property that went all the way to Falkirk. But I only have to say that the value of the property would probably actually even be a lot more without that whole back. It used to be a sanctuary, and the rooms that were alongside of it that are in such disrepair that it's more of a liability to the property than it is an asset. So just saying that, I don't know if that would offset the money that you're talking about needing to spend to get it out of its current condition of disrepair, but there's that might be considerable.
Yeah, we are definitely considering what the best option would be as far as addressing deferred maintenance, whether it be selling it as is or grazing portions or, just doing the necessary maintenance. So it's all under consideration as to just what would be the best way to go about achieving the market value. If you're spending more money just to break even, then it may not end up being worth it. But yeah, it's all being considered.
Okay.
So thank you for that
Well,
history of it. And yeah, it's been through
No,
some wars through the years.
I just know it was a consideration back then, and even if the church organization decides to keep it, that portion could be done, and it would probably be in better shape than it is currently, just to maybe wipe it clean and start anew on the back portion anyway. So just thought I'd throw it out.
Thanks, Chad.
I'm just curious, how many members does the Turlock campus have?
How many members?
Um,
Members, we can give you an exact number, but attenders is a different number, Marcia.
yeah, the members are between 20 and 30 on the partnership list. 21. Thank you on partnership. And attendance some varies week to week between, on a low week 80 something, and on a today was a very high day and they had 131. I would say on a typical high week they're maybe at 118.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Since
This is- Go ahead.
since we're an Assemblies of God church, and I know the Turlock property was Assemblies of God before we took over, Northside was Assemblies of God, and the loan is an AG financial loan. Are there any limitations on who we sell it to, or are they pretty open?
They're pretty open.
But speaking to that valid perspective, I am in connection with our district leadership and walking with them just as we navigate this, as that was a church in the Assembly of God before it became part of one church. And so this is just something that we don't do lightly. And so their leadership and input into the process is something that we want and have in many things that we have gone through and are going through.
Deb Wilson. Who is that?
Go ahead, Deb.
Oh, I was just going to get back to the St. John's campus, just for my own, thoughts. Do we still currently have churches renting and meeting there on Sundays?
Yeah, there's some smaller congregations currently renting from there, and we believe we'd be able to help them relocate, potentially even just at one church campuses or elsewhere if need be.
Okay,
There are three ethnic churches, a Filipino church, a Samoan church, and a new Hispanic church plant that are all very blessed to be there. That's what they say. And we love them. Pastors Dan and Kathy Stump, along with Jordan, they serve them and communicate and care for them so well. And we had a meeting with them already. We've had a meeting with the Assyrian church that's actually a parent affiliated church with one church. So you may not know this, but we have actually 8 congregations. They've been talked to already about what's going on in Turlock. The business in the back that Chad mentioned, Gem Juicery, who are members of our church, wonderful family. They are in the know, and we're just walking this very carefully with all the precious people that are affected by this. So Jordan spoke up true as both the pastor of one church and the presbyter of our area. That's just a fancy word that means I help support all the churches of the Central San Joaquin section of the Assemblies of God. We are not wanting any church to be homeless, and we'll do all that we can to provide a place and have. That's why we worked hard to find the place to begin with for those folks.
And then also, do we still have a lot of stuff stored over there? Because one of the practical things is going to be, what are we going to do with stuff that we still own if it's over there?
There's not as much now as there was before because just with the transition on the property, a lot of it has been already addressed, but there is still one building that remains that's got a few things in it that would probably be a long work day to get cleared out and relocated.
and on that note, we do have ministries that operate out of the St. John's property. And so that also would need to be walked out. Those conversations have not happened yet, though I believe I've started to talk with some of our team just about how we can care for one of our longest standing ministries is Beans and Rice and Jesus Christ. And so we would need to figure that out. But they've based out of other campuses in the past. And so we would just need to care for them as well. Changes change, and it's hard no matter how you slice it. So
Daniel Johnston. I'd like to go back and ask a question about the Turlock property. You mentioned that there was an AG loan. And if there still is a loan, what is the outstanding balance based on what the price value of the property was?
the language would be AG Financial is our lender. It's just housed under the Assemblies of God. But just for clarity, the AG as a denomination, as a church, doesn't necessarily give loans out, but they have a mortgage company for churches, as well as it's where a lot of us ministers house our retirement accounts. Anyway, that's AG Financial. And so that's what you're mentioning. I just want to clear up that language. Jordan?
Yeah, we have a single church loan, and the part that we would allocate towards the Turlock campus is currently right over $1 million.
Okay.
So yeah, so the floor price considered is 3.6 and the list price of 4.6 with a current of right over $1 million of the loan.
Thank you.
Good question, Dan. Any other questions or comments, concerns? As you're thinking, could I give Aaron Yanagi as a representative of the board, or Marty Villa as a representative of the board? Would you like to speak to just our process of considering, some of these things for the months that we've been considering? I know the ERC solar roof, that process dates back to the beginning of the year, maybe even a little bit last year, and that might predate your term, Aaron. But the process of discussion on some of the other matters is, of course, more than just the last month. You've known for longer than the people that heard via email. So I defer to you if you've got anything just to add or reinforce or whatever, while the rest are waiting. See if you have any other comments, questions, concerns.
I'll speak to that. This is Marty Villa, and I think, but this is I'm into my third year on the board, or getting ready for it or something. I forget where I am in transition. But because of that, I've been following this. And one of the things I'm excited about is the board has asked all kinds of questions. Every time one of these opportunities has come up, we have looked at it critically. We had looked at it with, say, have we checked all the other options? Have we considered all possibilities and all the liabilities and all of the unforeseen things? And we've hashed it out. We've spent hours on this, and but I think valuable time spent, invested, so that we could understand it better. And we feel, we came to a place where we feel confident that what we're proposing to vote on is, or that it may go to a vote on the 24th. We feel confident that we're moving the right direction with these proposals.
Thank you, Marty. Aaron, would you like to add anything?
That was a great summary. So nothing immediately comes to mind more than that. Thanks, Marty.
A few of you others, as representatives, have sat in some discussions on this, and I always want you to feel welcome to speak too. So any questions from just anybody on the call? Thoughts, concerns? We don't want to belabor this any longer. Anybody feel?
Pastor Kyle, Chuck Adams here. With regard to the floor price for St. John's as opposed to the asking price, do we have any interested buyers at this point? And what is the likelihood that we would be able to receive more than the floor price for St. John's?
Well, interestingly enough, when I came 12 years ago here, the appraised value of that property, I believe, was around $900,000. So to Pastor Dave's point about the asset there in downtown Modesto versus an asset in Ripon, we know that land in Ripon is a lot more than it was 10 years ago. And I think it speaks to the fact that this asset in downtown Modesto is not increasing in value.
Right.
So that's just one noteworthy thing. Ironically, you ask if there's interest. First of all, I'm cautioned to handle these things through our realtor, but ironically, I did have a pastor of a Hispanic church plant that started a year and a half ago, I think. Not the one that's currently meeting in the property. That's more recent, but got my number from somebody and texted me yesterday and asked to talk about it. So I was on my way home from the Texas Longhorns beating the Alabama Crimson Tide from my dad's house in El Dorado Hills. Thank you, Marcia. Everybody else is not as excited as you should be. And
you and Will Kane.
Yeah. And so I told him, he texted me, hey, I want to talk, of course, it's very interesting. Most of you would like, I'll call you right now. And I'm like, I'd love to talk about it, but it's going to have to be later tonight. And so I'm driving by at home at 9 o'clock, and he was more than willing to talk then. And anyway, I am sending a text message between he and our realtor today for them to talk. So I hear from a few people that there are interested churches looking for a property out there, and what a blessing that property will be to somebody.
Sure.
We just pray that the blessing and the right amount for what the Lord's putting on our heart to sell it for converge, and it can continue to be a great place for Kingdom of God to be advanced. Does that answer your question, Pastor Chuck?
Yeah, I think so.
Heather, you spoke up a second ago.
I was just wondering what our current total debt picture looks like right now.
The church loan's right over $5 million.
Okay.
We lost
yeah.
Jordan, you're muted. Jordan, you're muted.
Right under $5 million, right over $5 million at the close of September.
Okay. My second question was, if we take on the new loan, will AG Financial be wrapping that into the loan we already have? Will it be a separate loan? Will it change interest rates or?
No, yeah, a separate loan, because our intention is for it to just be a stopgap loan. So I've told them, like the whole situation that, it could be paid off in a week or, or whatever. And so there's no prepayment penalties or anything. And we don't want it to touch our existing loan because we have a phenomenal interest rate. And
right.
So it's,
things have changed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Good questions and good thoughts. And I just love that you're asking them, because this is helpful. If you have any thoughts or ideas that we haven't thought of, we want to be able to take the next week or two and go discover the answers that you might help us come up with. So this is a really great picture of partnership for you that have devoted this time. And also, of course, our hope is to expedite the conversation at the next meeting. So you're asking for yourself, but you're asking for others as well. So is there something you feel like we've not covered? I'm going to give maybe 5 more minutes of discussion at the most.
Pastor Kyle.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve, I saw you unmute your mic. Do you have something real quick? Maybe not.
Go ahead, Aaron, and then we'll see if he speaks up.
So in kind of talking about what Marty's point was about having these months to look at all these things, and the board kind of evaluating, asking questions as each one came individually, and looking at the financial side, and then also looking at the ministry side. We've had a long time to ask questions and a long time to process. We know that for the congregation, this seems like a lot of things all happening at once, on top of some major transitions with the staff and leadership on the pastoral staff and those kinds of things. So we talked a little bit about how kind of in the spirit of the thing, the kind of the spirit of the conversation, the St. John's is, monies would be used to eliminate the debt for the Ripon purchase. But then we kind of sidebarred.
You froze. Uh-oh, we lost him.
That was wild. I totally got disconnected there.
You're back.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
We
Last
thought you
thing
were
we heard-
raptured and we were all left and you were gone.
If I'm missing and you're all someplace else, I don't trust any of that. I don't.
We heard you say sidebar was the last thing, and we sidebarred.
Yeah, we kind of a separate thing. We began to talk about Turlock, and so maybe this is kind of just a question or a comment for Jordan to kind of speak to. Is how does the Turlock potential sale and going through the particulars of whether or not to sell and when to do that, and if that is even going to happen, when does and how does that kind of factor into the big picture of some of these other items that we're talking about, just to kind of keep it straight, because we're talking about a roof and solar, we're talking about a Ripon purchase and a St. John sell, and so there's a lot of moving parts, and the board has had a lot of time to process through these as individual things, but as it's coming to the congregation, it's kind of all at once. So just maybe a little bit of commenting on how these things are connected at all, if they are. So
yeah, it's great. Part of that, given the whole picture, is why I'm recommending a path where we don't utilize all the cash that we have from the ERC for the initial purchase of things, in order to have that in the bank to buy us time with the Turlock campus loan payment, to not be forced in any direction for something that might not be healthy for the church or the people. And so that's where keeping that $236,000 in the bank gives us that cushion to be able to continue at Turlock, or to consider selling Turlock and not necessarily feel a time pressure to take something that's not the best option. So, if that wasn't the scenario, then, we would probably look to use more of the ERC cash up front and take a smaller loan. But I just think it would be prudent to keep that cash in the bank to give us time, given the whole picture and all the layers, and not, these are all things that look to line up, but you never really know. So I think having a little bit of margin is always a wise thing when you have that option. And so I feel like we do have that option if we choose to keep some of that cash in the bank and to not feel the time crunch.
And just to recap, just back to my comments, the board does look at a lot of numbers, and we make a lot of, we have a lot of financial discussions, but this is also, it's very, very important that the congregation understands, and we're kind of talking to the choir here, but these are all ministry decisions. Like these are these are congregations, these are people, we understand, that change, and that, these decisions are not just made in a vacuum, based on spreadsheet numbers, that they're, affecting, people's lives and ministry. And that's all something that is very much, as Marty was saying earlier, in the multiple, conversations and meetings, that we go through, the ministry of it is still at the very heart of what we're, is a center focus of what the conversations are. And so I don't know how well I express some of my thoughts there, but just to reiterate that, people are still at the heart of, all of these conversations. So that's all.
One thing I came to my mind as you were talking, Aaron, and I'll just try to say it straight, but if we sell the St. John's property and add that money to the ERC money, you have anywhere from 1.43 million to 1.73 million. If we do all the expenses, the parcels, the roofing, the solar, that number after the incentives is 1.25 million. So that is basically meaning once we sell St. John's, we can do it all, plus the money we have in the bank, for either $150,000, $186,000 actually, all the way up to, if we go on the high side of the St. John's property of 1.2, remember the ceiling or the list price, it goes up to almost $500,000 of extra that we have then to do something else with. So I just want to be clear that whole piece kind of works together and covers itself. The Turlock property and its sell would really just be above and beyond this, multi-layered plan that we've said to you today. And that sell would really go towards debt reduction, financial margin, and probably even on some level, if we sell it for its full price, be able to be the dream, accomplished by a miraculous provision from the Lord. So I hope that makes sense. Turlock is kind of an island in the discussion. The rest is all part of one picture. Sonia, I see that hand.
Thank you, Pastor. Yes, on the talk of Turlock, I understand. I'm sorry, my husband has his on. Sorry. What I wanted to say is, with the sale of Turlock, or the thinking of it, just because, this is, how many years have we had Turlock going? 4, 5?
2018.
So yeah, that's 5, 6 years ago. 5 years ago. I got married in 2018. That makes it easy. So being that there's such a large debt on this campus, and it needs so much done to it, so much money put into it, and it's got to be very hard for the pastors who are there. Would it possibly make it easier if there was a place that they could meet and it not have that burden? If we do sell and be able to do something in a way better for them, that's not as messed up?
Yeah, can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Is that okay, Kyle?
Please, you can speak anytime you want.
Thanks. Sonia, that is our prayer. our prayer and our heart is we are super committed to the congregation. We feel very committed to that community. We believe that, there are more people to be reached there. And we feel like right now, the burden of the building is a weight that campus pastor is having to carry. Any campus pastor that goes there has to, anyone.
Absolutely.
Carry
And the family.
and the
That's-
family.
And the
That's
one
absolutely
family
right.
carrying that right now.
Yes. All of our campus pastors, all of our campuses are sacrificing to make ministry in Turlock happen. And we're happy to do it. It is why. But I do believe that if we did not have this, if we could sell Turlock's property, if the Lord is in that decision, we already have some creative possible ideas that we think could be amazing, of a place to meet that would allow great ministry and would be a financial blessing and would give a campus pastor the ability to come in and dream and not feel like they're a mile underground having to dig their way out of something in order to be able to then go do something great. So
absolutely. I think that's a very positive way to look at it and to deal with it. And like you said, that would add a lot. And I agree with the sale of St. John's, as beautiful it is as it is. It's time. It's time.
Here's how I'd like to wrap up.
Can I ask a question real quick, just about the sale of St. John's?
Absolutely. 1 second. Yes, Chad. Here's how we'll wrap up after Chad. I'm going to pray after that, and that kind of will be an informal dismissal. But then we'll keep recording. And if there's any other questions from people that remain, we'll take them. But that way, those who are watching on playback can kind of know when there's a soft ending, if they're short on time, and if they want to keep watching, they can. So we're going to go Chad Kingsland question, then I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to stay on as long as I need to with you. But I want to also free people to go enjoy the rest of their Sunday after that too. So Chad Kingsland, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. Does any money need to be invested into the St. John's property before it can be sold? I know there's been some issues in the past, plumbing issues and stuff. So just, am I still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Thought it cut out. So yeah, just curious if any finances need to be invested in the St. John's campus and or the Turlock campus before they can be listed. And if so, what the timeline would be and the cost would be.
For the St. John's property, if it remains a church, we believe it, if there is anything, it'd be pretty minimal. If we're to change uses, then there could be some unknowns there based on the specific use of the property. But we don't believe there's anything imminent as of this moment that we're aware of with the St. John's property. Turlock, we did mention some different things to consider with some of the maintenance as to whether or not it'd be wiser to address them before listing or just solicit as is, of which we're primarily go with the expertise of our commercial real estate agent as to what his recommendation is. We definitely take that into heavy consideration as to what the best route would be. But same thing as well with the Turlock property is kind of pending on which route the sale would go could determine what forms of maintenance would be prudent.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, great thoughts and questions, everybody. And this has been time well spent. That has hopefully served you and will serve our partners as they watch back. So let me pray, and then again, I'll stay on and answer any questions with Jordan and whoever else. So, Lord, thank you so much for the wisdom of the partners, but I also thank you for their interests. In either case, they are doing what is the heart of being a partner. You know, we certainly have a sacred responsibility in official meetings when we vote and things like that. But before the votes are possible and for healthy votes, it's discussion like this, it's questions, it's answers, it's work that is put in by Jordan, by a board, by other people to be ready for the questions and the answers. And so we're just thankful for this glimpse of what it means to truly be a partner and to truly be a healthy congregational model leadership that a church is. And so I pray that this process just helps us as we're walking through this season and navigating, as has been mentioned, different transition, but also different opportunities. So today, go with us, be with my friends, give them good health, give them good rest tonight, and continue to be just the God of one church. This is your church. We follow you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, I'll let everybody go that wants to go. And if there's anybody else that has a question, in a few seconds, you can speak up about that.
Deb Wilson again. Just a quick question on the solar panels. You mentioned that we would have to get the permits in the year 2023 in order to get the whatever from the government. Does that mean we would also have to do the actual projects in 2023, or would we be able to defer?
No, yeah, it's just getting the permits approved by the city, and then it's considered a 2023 project. Now, none of it is contingent upon receiving the 30% credit back. It's simply to avoid having to pay prevailing wage on the project, which would just make the projects cost more money. Now, obviously with the roof, there's also the real life side of, you'd like to have your roof done before it starts raining. So that's also a timeline. The roofers, though, are familiar with our property, so they know which areas are more pressing. And so they could prioritize that, and they feel comfortable with the timeline that they could probably take care of the big issues before the rains really pick up. Now, that's all barring we don't have more lightning and thunderstorms like we did yesterday. So, I mean, what do any of us really know? But yeah, the timeline on the solar is specifically for the permits. They think as of right now, we're in a pretty good spot if we're able to move forward on the 24th to get those permits landed. But, we're waiting on the city, so there'd be no way to definitively know. And they think we'd be on a timeline to be completed probably mid 2024 and fully live. But there are obviously a lot of companies and businesses taking advantage of this, because when do you get 30% off solar and roofing? So there's, we've been working with these guys for over 2 years on this bid now. I looked back at my emails back in 2022. So they're very familiar. They're waiting on me to give them the full green light. So we think we're in a pretty good spot, but obviously there's still no way to definitively know some of these timelines, if we'll be able to hit them or not, but they feel confident.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time, everybody. Special shout out to all my campus pastor and lead team friends out there. And of course, I can't leave out probably a drummer like Chad, who's been at the church since 6 a.m. But anyway, to everybody who's given a full day already, just blessings upon you. You're awesome.
Thank you, Pastor and Jordan, all of you. Thank you for getting us informed. It's truly appreciated.
It's very appreciated. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.